On sex and human trafficking. I just want to thank everyone who has come out, our panelists, and those of you who are here, those who are watching online. Obviously, it's a very important conversation that we need to have. You're going to hear some presentations today, but you also, if you have your questions, please ask them. We will have Q&A at the end. So I'm going to do my part. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to turn it over to our hostess. I don't want to be politically correct, I guess. Amelia. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your grace and mercy. I thank you, dear Lord, for giving us this platform, Father God, in which to speak on this subject. Father, even as we're here, we know that there are young men and young ladies, dear Lord, who are trapped in this. And we pray, Father God, for their protection, for their peace, dear Lord, until your deliverance shows up for them. I pray, Father God, for everyone under the sound of my voice, that if this is happening somewhere in their sphere of influence, that they would have the boldness to speak up against it. And if there's anyone under the sound of my voice, Father God, who is trapped in this right now, would have the boldness to reach out to someone to get the help that they need to get out of their situation. Father, we love, we praise you, we give you glory and honor. Father, I pray this in your precious and holy Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Amelia.
So it goes way up higher. I'm Amelia Stanzel. I want to say welcome to everyone. Welcome to those of you that are online as well. I'm Amelia Stanzel. I am the co-founder of Fauquier County Anti-Sex Trafficking Alliance, FASTA, and I'm the president-elect of the Rotary Club of Warrenton. FASTA is a project of ours that we started back in about 2018 to be able to help raise awareness within the community about sex trafficking and human trafficking in general. We have our community conversations as we have here today. We do them in churches and in schools and in community groups around the county, as well as we host stakeholder meetings and to be able to pull together the various groups in our community, whether it's a governmental agency or the non-governmental agencies, churches, and so on, that can be able to come together to be able to find ways to collaborate and to solve problems within the community to be able to combat trafficking. So I want to share a couple of slides this morning just with some information just generally about trafficking. And I don't know how they're doing it. Okay, it's up. Yay. Okay. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. Go ahead and go to the next slide, though, please. So some of the things that stood out to me, my day job is I'm a banker. And as a banker, numbers kind of resonate with me, and I can't unsee them once I see them. And I can't help but count and kind of go through statistics constantly. It's a sickness that I have. But one that stood out to me early on in this trafficking project was that 1 in 5 kids are going to be approached by a trafficker online before they're 18. 1 in 5. I go to a small little Lutheran church here in town, and when they do the Saturday night service and the kids go up front, there's usually 4 or 5 kids up there, and I can't help but count those kids and know that 2 of those heads are mine and wonder if I've done enough to protect them, if I've done enough to protect those other kids that are there. Have I taught them what to do, not if, but when they're approached online? Have I done enough? And I think that that's our role here as doing community awareness, is to be able to help protect those kids. So the next slide and statistic that jumped out was that 1 in 7 males have paid for commercial sex in the U.S. That's until 2010. So that's a really old statistic. I would love to find a newer statistic. I've got to go out and really do some more research to try to find that. But 1 in 7 have paid for commercial sex. That amazed me and that shocked me. And I sat there and I was like, wow. So then I can't help sitting in groups. Sorry, guys, I'm sitting here counting. I cannot help it, but 1 in 7. Whether it's at church, it's at the grocery store, it's at a Rotary meeting, it's in every gathering. 1 in 7. That just blew my mind. So the next slide. Where are they in Virginia? So this is a heat map. So the National Human Trafficking Hotline puts out a heat map each year that shows where have those reported instances come from. And if you think of reported instances, it's like a tip of the iceberg. They estimate less than 1% of trafficking cases are ever properly reported and put into this. So this is what they know of that's been reported. But if you look on there, it's all around us right here in Fauquier County. It is right at our doorstep, which tells us that it's right here in our county too. Most likely, we just haven't caught it. We haven't had it reported yet. It's just a matter of time though. So, and then the next one is, what do I do if I suspect something? We're gonna hear more about that from our other presenters today, but up front are some posters, are some restroom posters. I highly recommend grab a stack of them and put them up everywhere you go. And by what I mean by everywhere you go, like literally everywhere you go to the restroom. Because you can't see my little pee-pee dance back here. But you can actually put those up in the restrooms. And the reason you put them up in the restroom is it helps raise awareness. It's in English and Spanish. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is available in the US, Canada, and Mexico. It's all the same phone number to dial. So we always say, call 911 and report it to the tip line. So the more reporting that we have, the better statistics that we're going to have overall. So I have a stack of those up front. Please take them, hang them up in restrooms. Perhaps a victim will be able to identify. Oftentimes it won't be the victim who's going to step forward. It's going to be somebody who sees it that goes, I know somebody that's like that. What do I do? So it may not be the victim that's going to reach out, but it may be someone else that they know, that they love, or that has seen them, even just in a gas station or in a grocery store, that was like, that just didn't make sense to me. What do I do? Because otherwise, we've all had those instances where we've had that spidey sense go up. And then you're like, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't feel equipped to be able to do something about it. So this is a way to be able to do that. So please take some. And then the last piece that's on there is, as we leave today up front, are a lot of little ribbons, little blue ribbons. Blue is the color for trafficking. I will say my children made 1,300 of these, so please take a handful because there's a lot of them. But wear them. If you have them on, people ask. The First Lady mentioned earlier is she was wearing one and somebody asked her about it. So she talked about trafficking, then she gave them the ribbon. So please take a handful, take that as your opportunity to have it as a conversation starter today and throughout your week, in your month. So it's a great opportunity for that. So with all of that, again, Amelia Stanzel with FASTA, and I want to now welcome Chief of Police Mike Cochis.
I won't jump there.
Please.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Amelia. And I just want to welcome everybody here to the town of Warrenton. And thank you to Pastor McCullough. Pastor McCullough has been a partner with the police department for a while now. He sits on our community action team, our church police coalition, and is a graduate along with his lovely wife of our community police academy, and continues to partner with us on all kinds of events. So thank you for hosting this today. Thank you to Amelia. Amelia just doing a tremendous amount of work in the community when it comes to this issue, and even educates me on it. I've been a cop for 25 years, and it's I'm still learning. This issue continues to evolve and becomes much more complex. I want to thank you to Sheriff Falls and the partnership that we have with him and his sheriff's office. They do a tremendous amount of work around this. As a small department, we don't have a ton of resources, and Sheriff and his folks just continuously to help us out with the different issues that we have. Billy Wolf, been doing this probably as long as I've been alive. He knows more about. Well, I'm not aging you, Bill, am I? So yeah, I mean, he's by far the subject matter expert probably in this country on this issue. So we're really fortunate to have him here. So thank you for being here. I'll leave the rest of this up to Amelia. So thank you, appreciate it.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so somewhere in here is bios. Almost had it together. So it is my honor to welcome up to the podium Senior Detective Candace Shaw. She's worked for the Fauquier County Sheriff's Office for 20 years and started her career in the Fauquier Adult Detention Center. She has worked her way through various divisions within the office and has been a detective assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division for the past 10 years. Detective Shaw is a child forensic interviewer and handles most of the child and sexual assault, abuse, and physical abuse cases within Fauquier County. Detective Shaw also assists with the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force and is a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force with the Virginia State Police. Please help me in welcoming Detective Shaw.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out to this great event to learn and get some very important knowledge on human trafficking. I'm going to talk briefly on sextortion. I do have a PowerPoint. There we go. So I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 20 years. I'm assigned to Criminal Investigations Division, and we are assigned various different cases I work a lot of the child cases, sex cases, physical abuse cases, things like that, along with our social services. So we get a lot of sextortion cases. So I just wanted to put this out there because a lot of people don't really understand or don't know exactly what sextortion is. So you can go to the next slide. A little bit about what we do. We have proactive investigations where we try to go online and we try to solicit people to try to, engage in activity with minors. We've done several operations in the past with ICAC, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that I'm a part of. So they do yearly operations that we go out and try to find victims that are either being trafficked or, doing things, trying to meet children online. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't been doing as many proactive investigations within Fauquier. We are working on doing some things in the near future with that. We also are training all of our officers to identify human trafficking by going to a specialized interdiction school. So when they do pull somebody over, they can take that traffic stop just a little bit further to see if something doesn't make sense. If there's, three girls in the car with one guy and each one has a different story, they can just make sure that everything checks out and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if they are doing something they're not, they can, ask the proper questions to just further that traffic stop just a little bit. If they see, a large box of hundreds of condoms, that's not normal. So they could ask more questions and maybe they are being trafficked. And we do have, Route 17 and 29, which goes right to 95. So we do believe that they are traveling through our county. Thankfully, we haven't had any significant trafficking cases within Fauquier County, but we do know that they are probably traveling through our county. So if we can get officers to, do a little bit more on their traffic stops to help try to recover anybody, that's a win for us and a win for our county. So that is fantastic. And Amelia put on a READ training for human trafficking for the entire Fauquier Sheriff's Office, State Police, Town Police, Social Services, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, even in Culpeper, right? So they were all able to get extra training to be able to conduct better interviews with victims that are potentially trafficked. So that's awesome. That's huge. You can go to the next slide. So what is sextortion? Sextortion is basically like a form of blackmail. So what we are seeing in our county is young juveniles are online and they are solicited by somebody that either pretends to be another child of their same age, maybe the opposite sex, and they start a conversation and they build their trust and they convince them to then, send illicit photographs of themselves. And then very quickly as they, the conversation goes on, this perpetrator ends up not being, a young 12-year-old girl as well. They end up being an adult that then threatens to then take the pictures that they have sent them and either share them online on their social media accounts or says that they're going to show them to their parents if they don't either send them more pictures or if they don't send them money. So we've had a lot of cases like this recently, and they're all scams. And what we've been able to do is write search warrants back for the IP addresses. And a lot of these scams are coming out of other countries, specifically in Africa, over in Ghana and other areas where there's a lot of fraud and scams happening. So we've been able to partner with the FBI, and we have such a great relationship with them that they are able to further those cases because Fauquier can't go to Africa or Fauquier can't go to the UK or wherever these people are at soliciting these crimes. So just recently, one of our detectives submitted a case to the FBI, and they were actually able to track it back to an actual person in the UK, which is huge. That's like one of the first ones we've actually been able to go back and actually get an offender. So they're working that case now with the FBI, and it's fantastic. So as a parent, all I can say is you need to start talking to your children, unfortunately, younger and younger and younger, because I go out to elementary schools and I'm doing forensic interviews, and these kids are having cell phones at like 8 years old, and they have no guidance, and they're looking at things that their parents are like, they're never going to find that on the internet. It's on the internet. You can search for something completely unrelated to sex and find sex online. It's everywhere. It's on Snapchat, social media, Facebook, Instagram, all those apps that the kids are using. There's a list of apps. You can go online and you can search what apps are appropriate and what's not appropriate to have on a phone, and search your children's phone. I have so many parents that come to me and like, well, It's their phone. I don't want to respect their privacy. That's their privacy. And I'm like, no, you pay that bill. You need to know what's on that. So if they're downloading inappropriate things or having conversations with people, you don't want us coming to your house with a search warrant for potential child pornography, or you don't want them online. You need to know what your kids are doing. So I cannot stress that enough. You need to go through your child's phone. You need to have those conversations, unfortunately, younger and younger, especially about sextortion, because it is happening. And it's not only happening with fraud, it's also happening with, like, in school. So you're in a relationship with a boyfriend, supposedly, and they request photos, and you send them because they're your boyfriend. And then a few weeks later, they're not your boyfriend anymore, but they want more pictures of you. So they're going to threaten to show these around school unless you send them more pictures, which is unfortunate because this does happen, and it has happened in our schools here. So we have to go backwards and try to work to try to, get all these pictures off these devices and off the internet, and that's extremely hard to do. Once a picture is shared, it's really, really, really hard to make it go away. So all I can say is educate your children, talk to your kids, have these open conversations. We are going to do some more of these communities and the conversations in the communities down at Cedar Lee and maybe at Auburn Middle School. Share the information, get parents to come and bring their kids. Because, yes, kids need to be sitting here. Kids need to hear that, yes, you can be trafficked. Yes, you can be sex extortioned. All these things are real life, and they do happen. So we need to be spreading this to our younger children as well, not just to the adults. They go home and tell the kids, and the kids are like, your mom, you don't know anything. But when they hear it from people that do it every day, it's very, very different. So I can't stress that enough. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next one, too. So this is a really interesting thing about the basically statistics on sextortion. And I have printed a bunch of these so you guys can take them, share them. So 1 in 6 kids are sharing nudes online. 50% of kids shared they didn't care that they knew that the recipient was real or not. 41% of those youth shared and sent images to people they believed it was adults. I just had a case not long ago with some kids at a private school, and this girl was sending out nude photos to a few friends. And when I talked to her, she's like, well, I don't see what the big deal is. Like, who cares? And I'm like, what do you mean, who cares? Like, these pictures are going to come back to haunt you as you get older. Yes, now you think it's no big deal. I was like, but your face is in those pictures. And it's just scary that the kid's just like, oh, well, it's just a picture. It's not really, like, it's not me. Like, it's just a picture. They don't have the... I don't know how to explain it, but when I was younger, you were terrified if you would ever to do something like that. Now it's just like, it's like a normal thing, and all the other kids are doing it, so it's no big deal. So it's sad that there's 40 and 50% of kids, and 1 out of 6 are sharing their pictures to strangers or people they know. 60% of people in sextortion cases knew the perpetrator. 51% did not report the incidents to friends or family, and 13% was reported to law enforcement. Only 13. That's not very much. So what can we do? We can talk to our children, remind them, don't create, request, or share images. Remember that 5 out of 6 children report that they have shared a new image. 1 in 4 victims of sextortion were 13 or younger when threatened. And the perpetrators to blame, make them know that they're not the victim. They need to understand that, yes, they may have sent the image, but in reality, they're not really the victim. They're not really the offender. They're the victim here, and they didn't, do anything wrong. There's additional resources. You can go to the website for missing and exploited children. There's lots of resources on there. There's flyers you can print out. There's conversation starters so you can talk to your children or talk to other people that that have children that can benefit from this information. So I will have these up here if you guys want to come up and take them afterwards. That would be great. You can go to the next slide. So this is a YouTube video. I don't know if it'll be able to play, but it's a great video, and I really suggest jotting down the information and sharing it with, if you have children, share it on your Facebook page, start making it go around so people can see it. Are you able to play the video? Oh, okay. It won't work. But it's a great video. It shows, like, it's an animated video showing cats, and a cat takes a picture of themselves, like an inappropriate picture, and then sends it around. And it's a really cute, funny video about sextortion and how you should not be doing that. So I do recommend this video. It's really cute. I can write down the URL link and get it to anybody that wants it. I think that's good. It is on the Facebook page too, so you can go there and find it. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out and listening to everybody talk. I just wanted to thank our partnerships. We partner with HSI and FBI and Amelia, everybody that comes out to help the Fauquier Sheriff's Office when we have any big cases. So we have a really good partnership with all of our federal agencies, and I just wanted to share that with you guys, and thank you guys for listening to me. Thanks.
And if you go out to our Facebook page, the at Fauquier Anti-Sex Trafficking Alliance, what is the name of this? If you go out to our Facebook page, that video is out there. I will tell you, it's like a 4-minute, and it's actually really cute. It is easy to be able to show to kids because it's about sextortion, but it's animated kitty cats. Everybody likes a cat video, right? But it helps you start that conversation of what would you do if? How would you handle if? And it helps start that conversation in a way that isn't like you telling them, but they can watch the video and be able to start that conversation in your house. So I'd highly recommend going out and just share that. It's a good conversation starter. Our next panelist is Bill Wolf, an incredible human being, and his bio doesn't even do him justice, but I'm going to read it anyway because you guys need to understand how incredibly blessed we are to have this person in this room today. Bill Wolf is the founder of Anti-Trafficking International, formerly known as Just Ask Prevention. He was the recipient of the Presidential Medal for extraordinary efforts to combat human trafficking. He's a former police detective, last assigned to the Child Exploitation Unit as a task force officer with the FBI. He has also served as the lead investigator and co-director of the Northern Virginia Human Trafficking Task Force. In addition to managing the task force, he was responsible for investigating all facets of human trafficking, compiling intelligence on trafficking trends and methods, tracking and interdicting trafficking activity, and disseminating information throughout the DC metro area in an effort to make the war against human trafficking more effective. Mr. Wolf was called upon to join the U.S. Department of Justice and serve as the Director of Human Trafficking Programs, as well as the Acting Director for the Office of Victims of Crime. Mr. Wolf has been recognized as an international expert regarding human trafficking with a particular focus on prevention and intervention strategies, having been called upon to testify in front of the U.S. Congress, as well as assisting other government agencies in the development and implementation of policy. He is an adjunct professor with both George Mason University and Eliosis College. One of these days I'm going to say that correctly, but I'll say he's pretty incredible. He lives right here in our community. Well, Gainesville, technically. He worships in our community, though. But he is just an awesome person to have, and I'm just so honored that he's been basically a partner in this since our very first set of meetings as we started walking through to learn about trafficking. I'm just absolutely just honored to have you here, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you all. Well, good morning. That's a lot of creative writing, so just ignore that. But it is certainly a pleasure to be here with you all to talk about a very important topic. You know, human trafficking is something that we don't really understand. It's something that is happening in our communities, and we're not really realizing the impact or realizing when we may encounter that situation. Well over a decade ago, thank you, Chief, for pointing out how old I am. Well over a decade ago, I was working as a gang detective in Northern Virginia. And it was in a case where we were trying to interdict MS-13. I'm sure all of you have heard of MS-13. And we had cultivated an informant. We inserted the informant into the gang. We said, look, we want to know what the gang's up to. We want to know what type of crimes they're engaged in, and we want to know how they're making their money. Because we knew they were bringing in revenue from somewhere. So the informant, he calls us back and he says...
digital technologies provide children and young people with a...
That was fun. All right, so...
The video works. We'll watch that after we're done with you.
Perfect. So the informant, you know, he calls us and he says, look, he said, the gang wants us to drive these girls around that are engaged in what he described as prostitution. Now, to us at the time, and looking back, you know, we make mistakes, and it's from the mistakes that we learn. But we said, sure, it's just prostitution. We had no idea what it was really about. But thinking back, I had asked that informant, I wanted to know what type of crimes they were involved in and how they were making money. What did my informant just tell me? He told me what type of crimes they were involved in and how they were making money. Did I hear that? No. Because oftentimes in our communities, in our lives, in our workplaces, we put these blinders on, right? We have certain biases when we go into situations, and we have these preconceived notions of what we're looking for. As a gang detective, because I've been taught and experienced through my investigations that gangs were very violent, I was looking for robberies, homicides, moving guns and drugs. Those were the types of crimes that I was looking for. But yet my informant had just answered the very question that I was after, and I didn't hear it. A couple of weeks later, he calls one night and he says, Wolf, look, this girl that I'm driving around tonight, she looks really young. I'm uncomfortable. So we went out, my partner and I, we did our due diligence. We interdicted the situation, and sure enough, it was a 16-year-old girl. But as a police officer with over 8 years of investigative experience at that point, still did not know what I was looking at. The next morning, we went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We sat down. We said, look, this is what happened last night. Can we do anything about this? The U.S. Attorney looked at us. He goes, well, you've got a great human trafficking case. My answer was, what the heck is human trafficking? I had never heard about it before. I had never been taught in my training about how to identify or respond to human trafficking. To me, human trafficking was something that happened in other countries across the ocean, something that impacted those developing nations because I believed that it was an economic issue. I never thought that human trafficking was happening in the United States, much less in our own community. And I could not have been more wrong. From that one case, it opened my eyes to the reality of human trafficking within our communities, the reality that it is happening oftentimes right in front of our faces. We have these myths or misconceptions that surround what human trafficking really is. But at its core, human trafficking is simply compelling a person to engage in either commercial sex or forced unfair labor. Let's break that down for a second. Compelling somebody. What does it mean to compel them? Does it mean that I have to hold a gun to their head? No. Does it mean that I have to grab them by the arm and physically force them to do something against their will? No. Simply mentally manipulating somebody or abusing a position of authority like a parent can lead to instances of human trafficking. It can lead to exploiting another individual. And we see exploitation in a lot of different ways. And the only thing that sets human trafficking apart is that there's a commercial element. It means that the exploitation is leading to the trafficker making money, or it's an exchange of something of value. And that's really all that we need to understand. So when we look at situations like quote unquote prostitution or commercial sex, if that person is being compelled in some sort of way to engage in that conduct, if that person, if that quote unquote prostitute did not wake up that morning and say, you know what, I'm going to go sell my body today. But somebody is compelling them, somebody's holding something over their head or driving them to engage in that type of conduct, that is human trafficking. If somebody is withholding documents from a foreign national in our country and forcing them to work in unfair ways, that is human trafficking. If somebody is threatening an individual or threatening to do harm to their family if they don't engage in commercial sex or some form of labor, that is human trafficking. It is in so many different forms here in the United States. But I think the most important thing to understand is that human trafficking has the ability to affect each and every community across our country. It's unfortunate, but things that are often invented for good purposes, like the internet, can often be used for bad. And unfortunately, traffickers are using the internet as a way to groom, manipulate, and even exploit other individuals. You heard from Detective Shaw about sextortion, and that's one way that the internet is being used to exploit young people. But we also see where traffickers are taking it to the next level, and they're exploiting and grooming these individuals into this lifestyle. Unfortunately, we had a pandemic, and the isolation created by COVID-19 did not slow human trafficking. In fact, it caused it to exceed its expectations. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has reported over 150% increase in reports of online exploitation and trafficking. Can you believe that? 150%. We're seeing our young people shifting more to being online and to engaging in having just relationships with individuals, right? When there was the lockdowns and schools were closed and kids were meant to stay home, we deprived them, they were deprived of that social interaction. We as human beings are social people. We thrive when we're around other people, right? We feed off of that energy. And when children don't have that interaction, it creates a void. It creates a longing for them. And because of their innocence and, dare I say, immaturity, they don't always know where to turn to for appropriate relationships. And so in steps the traffickers. These traffickers are very smart, they're manipulative, and the one thing that is important to understand is that they are patient. These are not white work vans pulling up on the street corner and kidnapping kids. These aren't necessarily the cases where you have a suspicious person in a Walmart parking lot that's trying to abduct somebody at 11 o'clock at night. Those are different types of crimes. What we're talking about is slow coercion, so much so and intentional, because the traffickers don't want their victims to understand that they are a victim. When I was working cases and when I train law enforcement, one of the things that I share with them is that the hardest part of the case, the hardest part of your investigation is going to be convincing the victim that they're a victim. They've been mentally manipulated to believe that they had a choice and that they chose the course of action that led to their exploitation. And nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why the law reflects such. So the United States has changed its law, and Virginia has adopted similar laws that say that if somebody is under the age of 18, if they are a minor, and they are engaged in the commercial sex industry, they are by legal definition a victim of human trafficking. There is no such thing as a juvenile prostitute anymore. There's no such thing that a juvenile can consent to engage in this type of conduct. And why that's so important is because the average age that a U.S. citizen becomes a victim of human trafficking is 14 to 16 years old. Let that sink in for a second. Human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. The United States is the third largest country of victims of human trafficking in the world. And the average age is 14 to 16 years old. The Federal Bureau of Investigation estimates that 50% of sex trafficking victims in the United States were either first exploited or are currently under the age of 18. These are our children that are being targeted. These are our children that are being targeted by traffickers all over the world. And if a trafficker wants to target somebody in Fauquier County, do they have to be in Fauquier County? No. They can be anywhere in the world. And we're seeing traffickers become smarter and smarter about how they engage in this type of conduct. The other sort of myth, and we just touched on it, but I want to kind of highlight that, and that is that many people believe that trafficking is something that only happens to foreign nationals. There's a lot of discussion on the national stage about our southern border and what we should do about immigration within the United States right now. And oftentimes you hear human trafficking being brought into that conversation. While it's important to consider the possibility of human trafficking on the southern border, we cannot conflate the two problems. They are not synonymous with one another because the majority of victims in the United States, over 80%, are here legally, are U.S. citizens or have legal status in the United States. This is not a problem that is focused solely on a foreign national population. Are they vulnerable to trafficking? Absolutely. But are they the only ones being targeted? Not by a long shot. Traffickers are really only looking for three things. They're looking for accessibility, suggestibility, and vulnerability. What does accessibility mean? It means if I'm a trafficker, how do I get access to you? How am I able to communicate with you? How am I able to groom and manipulate you into this? A lot of times it's the internet. But it can also be in person. It can also be with individuals with whom you trust. I'm not trying to jump forward in today's presentations, but it could also maybe even be a family member that exploits others. The reality is that we're seeing an increase. We're seeing an increase in what we call familial trafficking, where biological parents, foster parents, those that are close to an individual are trafficking their own family members. We're seeing an increase in what we call peer-to-peer trafficking. 16-year-olds are trafficking 16-year-olds. Why is that? How would a 16-year-old know how to traffic another individual? The internet. You can go on YouTube today and you can Google how to be a human trafficker. You can Google how to be a pimp, because pimping is human trafficking. You can learn about it. You can actually go on Amazon, or if you have Amazon Kindle, and download a book today called Pimping 101 and learn step by step how to manipulate people into this lifestyle. It has unfortunately seeped into the culture that surrounds us. We see this over-sexualization of society today. We see this shifting away from what we understand to be and what God intended human sexuality to be into a world where sex has become purely recreational. And when we adopt, I know it's not Sunday, I'm not trying to preach, but when we adopt this approach that sex is simply recreational, then it is much easier for the traffickers to come in. And one of their famous phrases that they use during the manipulation phase is, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit, but why have sex for free when you can have sex for a fee? If you're just doing it recreationally, why not make some money off of it? And in fact, they're making a lot of money. Human traffickers make over $100,000 a year, tax-free. It's a cash business. $9.8 billion in the United States annually. 9.8 billion with a B annually. $150 billion industry worldwide. There is a lot of money that is being made in this space. A lot of money. And so, of course, these traffickers are going to want to get access to goods. That's how they see people. They see people as goods, as a means to profit. And once they have access to them, they need to ensure that they are highly suggestible. What does that mean? Suggestible means, is it easy to convince them that this is normal? Is it easy to convince them that they should have sex for a fee? And unfortunately, because of the points that we just highlighted with the over-sexualization of society today, it's much easier to convince them in today's day and age, which is why we are seeing human trafficking grow at an exponential rate. The last thing that they look for is a vulnerability. How many of us don't have any vulnerabilities? Right? We all do. It's part of being human. The difference is that as mature adults, right, we don't necessarily share our vulnerabilities with others. The reason is because then it gives somebody leverage over us. It gives somebody the ability to take advantage. So oftentimes traffickers, particularly if they're strangers, people that are coming into this individual's life for the first time, they want to learn about that vulnerability. And they're going to do so in what seems to be a very loving and caring way. And then they're going to try to fill that void that that individual has, whatever it might be. Maybe that kid is not getting along with their parents. Maybe they want to pursue a career path that the parents don't necessarily want to. Maybe there are other factors, maybe even low self-esteem, that trafficker can exploit. There was one case that I worked, 17-year-old girl, and she was a great kid, 4-point-something GPA, doing well in school, lived in a very nice neighborhood. I would call them middle to upper class. Both parents in the home. She was involved in sports as well as a music program at school. And the only thing that she didn't have was self-esteem. Now, she had a job because her parents wanted her to know the value of $1, and so she was working at a local retail store. And in comes a trafficker. Now, this trafficker was not much older than her. He was about 22 years old at the time. And he recognized right away the low self-esteem that this young lady had. He approached her, he engaged her in conversation, learned that what she really longed for was a boyfriend. And guess what? He became the boyfriend. Built a relationship with her, told her that he loved her. Oftentimes we forget how powerful that four-letter word really is, especially among young people. It is a very powerful word, and traffickers will throw it around. So he tells her that he loves her. He convinces her to have sex with him, so it's her first physical relationship, which creates another level of commitment and emotional attachment to the situation. And then he finds out about all of her hopes and dreams. Where does she want to go in life? What are the things that really drive her and get her excited? And guess what? He has all the same hopes and dreams. This happens over the course of about 3 to 4 months. Traffickers are patient. They will invest the time because they know they'll get a return on their investment. So this young lady, she's fallen in love with this guy. They're making future plans. They're going to run off together. He's going to follow her to college, and they're going to get that what is it, the house with the white picket fence around it, right? That's the dream. And then one day he comes to her with an emergency. He says, look, I can't make my rent this week. I need help. She says, what can I do? And he goes, well, can I have $1,000? She says, no, I don't have $1,000. If I did, my parents would see, me taking it out of my bank account. I can't give you that kind of money. Then he lays on the guilt trip. Well, if I don't pay my rent, I'm going to have to move out of the area. If I have to move out of the area, I guess there's no point in our relationship continuing. And then all those dreams that we've decided on are going to go down the drain. You see the intentionality of everything that trafficker did up to this point. This wasn't chance. This wasn't happenstance. This was calculated in everything that he did. And so now she gets upset. What am I going to do? He says, look, he goes, I don't want you to do this, but I have a buddy, and he'll pay my rent for me this month if you have sex with him one time. She says, I'm not really comfortable with that. He goes, look, I don't want you to do it either. I love you. I don't want to put you in that situation, but I'm stuck in a corner here and I just don't know what to do. He says, if you don't do this, everything is going to be over. That's the level of manipulation. It's not kidnapping. It's not holding a gun to somebody's head. It's forcing them in a desperate situation to do something that they don't want to do. Because these traffickers know they only have to get their victims to engage in that act one time. One time. Because the mental impact of engaging in commercial sex is something that many of us don't realize. The trauma and the impact associated with it. And this is why victims of human trafficking have so many needs coming out of the situation. This is why they live with the trauma for essentially the rest of their life, because it was a trust relationship. It was a relationship built on love that was used to exploit that individual. And so as a result, these individuals have all kinds of lifelong impact as a result. And this is why it's so important that we engage. It's important that the community comes together to be able to support this problem. Now, there are efforts all across the country to impact human trafficking. When I was director of human trafficking programs at DOJ, my budget was $100 million a year to fight this problem. But a $100 million budget up against a $9.8 billion industry is just not going to do it. It's not going to do it, folks. And so the way that we have real impact on this fight is coming together as a community, just like you are today. Because each and every one of you plays a part in ending human trafficking. Now, we are very fortunate in this community that we have some incredible law enforcement officers. You've got an incredible sheriff and sheriff's department and a great chief and town police department that are very engaged and responsive to this. In fact, as I've traveled the country, very few other places in the country have law enforcement officers as dedicated to this problem as you all have in your community. You've got a great partnership with Rotary International and FASTA, who is helping to bring the community together. But I'm going to be very direct. You cannot put this problem simply on the shoulders of law enforcement. You cannot put this problem simply on certain community leaders like Amelia that are willing to step up for the cause. Each and every one of you needs to step up. Each and every one of you needs to get engaged and involved in this fight. As Detective Shaw mentioned, you've been fortunate to not really have a lot of major cases involving human trafficking in this jurisdiction. But there still have been people that have been targeted in your community. There have been people that have been brought out of Fauquier County and taken to Manassas, Northern Virginia, Stafford, and Fredericksburg to be exploited. And you can best believe that the traffickers don't care that this is Fauquier County. They're only looking for access to potential victims. They're looking to potential victims that are highly suggestible, and they're looking for victims that are vulnerable. And they can find them easily on the internet. So we've got to educate our community. What you hear today, what you learn today is simply the tip of the iceberg. And I'd encourage all of you to learn more, to be proactive in this situation. You know, I don't think that it's ironic or coincidental that we're having this conversation today. The day before Easter, when we celebrate our freedom that God has given to us, freedom from sin. But there are so many people that are not free in this world today. There are so many people that are enslaved and exploited. And we need to follow that example. We need to stand up so that they know that they are loved, so that they know that there is hope. And the first step is education. The second step is taking action. So I invite all of you to visit Anti-Trafficking International's website. It's www.preventht.org. I've also brought some materials up here that you can grab later. One of the programs that we have is a way that you all can directly get involved, and that's called our Community Ambassador Program. It's a way for you to learn more about human trafficking and then to be equipped and empowered to go out into your community and spread the word. Because our goal at ATI is to prevent human trafficking. Our goal is to stop it before it starts. Because I can tell you from having the privilege and honor of working with so many survivors of human trafficking, that we need to be focused on making sure that there is not one more victim. Not one more. In just a few minutes, you're going to hear from my friend and my boss, Barbara Jean Wilson, who can share with you the realities and the impact that it has on the individual. So I thank you all for taking your day to be here, this beautiful Saturday afternoon, this day of preparation, to be here to hear this message. And I hope that you all will be encouraged to take it out into the community, because it is through your voice that we will truly stop human trafficking before it starts. Thank you.
Told you that you guys were in for a big old treat having him be able to be here today. He's awesome. So as we heard at the very beginning, the video is ready to cue and play. So I want to share this video with you that Detective Shaw was trying to get to work on sextortion. It's about a 4-minute video. It is really well done, and I think will be very helpful to be able to get for you to understand what sextortion is and how to start that conversation with the young people in your lives about it, and frankly, the old people too, because it isn't like this is a young person's game.
So you did a thing. You sent a picture of yourself with no clothes on. Something you thought wouldn't be shared. And in a polite society, cats wear clothes, right? Anyway, seemed like a good idea at the time. But now things have gone wrong. Terribly wrong. Maybe you shared the picture with someone you loved and trusted, but after a while, things weren't so friendly. Or they said they'd help you become a star, but they just wanted to use you. Or maybe you met someone online and they really seemed to understand you, but then it got weird, and it turned out to be someone totally different. Now the person you shared the pic with is demanding more and threatening to tell. That's sextortion. Yep, that's a thing. The perpetrator relies on you feeling ashamed and keeping quiet. But they are the ones who should be ashamed. What they are doing is wrong. And it's never too late to find your voice to ask for help. Or too early to reach out to your friends to tell them you'll be there no matter what. In fact, you can stop sextortion before it starts by talking about it now. With support, you can do anything, and you can focus on the important business of being cats. So tell your closest friends today you've got their back no matter what.
Very well done video, I have to say. I've watched that several times, and I think it's been a very good way to be able to start the conversation with the young people in my life, and hopefully it'll be a good way to start the conversation with the young people in your life. Who doesn't love a cat video? And I will say that video is by Thorn, and Thorn is the production company put together by Ashton Kutcher. So he is very engaged in this process with both sextortion as well as with the human trafficking and sex trafficking prevention. So just doing incredible work too. I got to listen to him. He was actually one of the ones that kind of got in my heart in 2017 at the Rotary International Convention down in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, if he's paying attention to that, maybe I should pay attention too. And that's where I really started learning more, was at that convention. So Thorn's a great group to be able to follow too. So as Bill talked about briefly about familial trafficking, so something that was shocking to me, one of the statistics that's out there is that 40% of trafficking is familial trafficking, oftentimes by the mother, the person that you rely on most. I think back to trying to figure that out at one point, and I started thinking about a song that was a Reba McEntire song from 1990, was Fancy Was Her Name, about a young lady who'd just come of age, and mom bought her fancy red dress and red lipstick and said, go out and earn the rent. Think about that. That was mainstream country music. Reba McEntire, for crying out loud, how normalized this is in many ways. And when I was asked if I could invite in a survivor of trafficking, that for some reason has been sticking in my mind lately, thinking about the familial trafficking, and was able to invite in a friend of mine, Miss Barbara Jean Wilson. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her before she comes down. But in 2011, Barbara published her first book, Mute, But Now I Speak, and in 2020 completed her second book, Blessings After Going Through the Valley. Her testimony reveals how she overcame the pain of childhood sexual abuse and human trafficking and receiving the blessings of God. Barbara has spoken to the United Nations in New York, Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., as well as the University of Albuquerque in New Mexico. These, along with other speaking events, have focused heavily on bringing awareness to the challenges of human trafficking, familial trafficking, sexual, physical, and mental abuse, as well as the overwhelming impact on the victims and survivors and the community. In addition to receiving numerous awards for her hard work and dedication while working at Freddie Mac, Barbara won Woman of the Year by the Women's Interactive Network, WIN, having been nominated by her peers and colleagues at Freddie Mac. During this event, Barbara was a featured panelist along with the Prince William County Chief of Police to discuss human trafficking and sexual abuse. Barbara received an award for her special service to the community and the positive influence made to the many lives through her work with WASUA, or it's a long acronym, we're going to go with that, WPI, headquartered in New York City. Barbara is an active member and speaker for RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, which is headquartered in Washington, D.C. She holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and in human resources from Strayer University. She serves on several boards. I think this is important to understand. This is a woman who was a victim, became a survivor, and is now an advocate, and really gets out as an advocate and as an activist. She's the chairwoman of the board for ATI, the Anti-Trafficking International, hence being Bill's boss. She's a member of the board for Reset 180, who you'll hear from Reset 180 in a little bit. She's a member of the board of the WUAWSU project. She's the advisory board member and director for the Victim Advocacy Resources and the National Child Protection Task Force. She's a District 16 Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force steering committee member for RCASA, Rappahannock Council Against Sexual Assault, and the Central Virginia Justice Initiatives. Barbara is the alumni secretary and historian for Strayer University for the past 2 years. She's an incredible woman, and I am just so honored to have Barbara Jean here to share her story. And I will say, grab the Kleenexes. Welcome, Barbara. And you look mighty fine in red.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Pastor, for allowing me to be here to speak. As I'm listening to each of the panel speakers giving their brief discussion on human trafficking and what to look for, how to help, and even when you're listening to the news, there's always talk on human trafficking. There's no talk on familiar trafficking. And I am a survivor of familiar trafficking. And I was trafficked, sexually abused and trafficked by my mother, her boyfriend. And the first time it happened, and I had told my mother, she had told me not to tell anyone because that's how the rent was getting paid. And so when it comes to trust, my first line of trust being broken was from my mother. And with familiar trafficking, because no one recognized it, you're not taken out of the house, they're brought into the house. And from the age of 8 to 13, not only was I being trafficked, but I was being fed drugs, I was being fed alcohol. The one time that I did have the courage to say no, one of the men put a gun to my head and said, "No one tells me no." The thing that people are not aware of or they don't pay attention to, and when I say people, I'm talking about, your neighbors, the school system, the police department. You're not focused on the child and what the child is going through, what the child is doing. In my case, and I will just give an example. Let's say it's a Friday, in school, you're playing tag, dodgeball with your other classmates, and 3 o'clock comes and the teacher tells, all the kids, have a great weekend, see you on Monday. When Barbara left on Friday, Barbara had a big smile on her face. Barbara was playing tag with the other kids. Barbara was very respectful. But when I came back on Monday, not only was I disrespectful to the teacher, I was disrespectful to the principal, I was picking on the other kids. When she sent me to the guidance counselor, I was disrespectful to the guidance counselor. She said, "Why are you being so bad?" And the other kids, "Why are you picking on the kids?" She never once asked what happened between Friday and now. The one time that I ran away from home, my mother came with the police officer. And I remember crying, because I had actually ran to my father's house, and I remember crying and pleading that I didn't want to go home with her. Why can't I stay with my father? The police officer, I did not see him as protection. I saw him as someone who paid my mother to do what he wanted to do to me. And I remember my father asking the police officer, why can't she stay with me? His answer was, that's something you have to take up with family court. His first mistake was, you have this little girl screaming and crying, not wanting to go with her mother. Most people know all kids are attached to their mother. So if a child is telling you that they don't want to go home, that they don't want to go with their mother, you didn't even take the time to say, you know what, let me speak to her and find out what's going on. Instead, you sent me back to what I was running from. And so at that point, I just continued to just do what I was told to do. To the point where, and I didn't find out until later in life, that there were so many people who knew what was happening, but no one came to save me. Whether they were getting paid or not, I don't know. But for me, it led me down a dark tunnel as far as once my mother threw me out of the house, how was I going to survive? I could only survive on doing what I was taught, and that was to sell my body. I had a young daughter when I was 16. My daughter sits right there. She's been my biggest supporter, my biggest cheerleader. And because of not just her, but by the grace of God, I stand here because what I had to do in order to survive, in order to make sure that I would protect her, I got deeper into alcohol, I got deeper into drugs, and deeper into the prostitution in order to make sure that I had a roof over my head. And God literally sent an angel, someone who stepped in. They didn't know what I was doing, but they said, let us take your daughter so that you can get yourself together. We're not going to keep her. We don't want to sign any papers, but so that you can get yourself together. Well, by them doing that, it gave me more freedom to get deeper and deeper into the prostitution, into the drugs, into the alcohol, because that's, as far as my mother's concerned, that was my worth. And so that's what I believed that I was only good for. And so this went on for years. And the thing that bothers me, even now, is when I see people on the street, whether it's a junkie, a prostitute, a teen mom, and I hear conversations from people and the things that they say about them. And, even people that didn't know my story, whether it was friends, co-workers who didn't know my story. And I would say to myself, how would you look at me and view me if you realize that that's who I was? Because for a long time, I kept silent. Kept very silent. And even in my book, Mute But Now I Speak, it starts out by saying it took me 39 years to open up and to share what I have gone through. And I'm going to bring Bill into this part of the conversation because for the first time, and Bill talks a lot, but this one question stunned him that he was quiet, because I actually met him when he came and he spoke at my job at Freddie Mac. And it was during April, which is Sexual Awareness Month. And one of the things he kept saying was parents, and I'm listening even now, as everyone is saying, you know, parents, talk to your kids, parents, parents, parents. And I'm sitting up there and I'm saying to myself, do they not realize that parents are the ones that's doing it? No one knows, because you think it's outside, it's inside as well. And you have so many kids that it's happening to in the house, but they don't know who to go to. They don't know who they can trust to turn to. For me, one of the things that I didn't want to do, and that's probably why I didn't say anything, was because I didn't want my mother to get in trouble. And I noticed that whenever I said no, like the men would beat her up. And so for me, I have to protect her. So I won't say no anymore. As long as I don't say no, they won't bother her. Because it was my job to protect her. And so so you have a lot of kids that are going through this. And for me, it wasn't just strangers. There were neighbors who lived across the street that would come over to the house. So some were strangers, but a majority of them, you know, I knew, or she knew, because they were long family friends. And they would actually say things to me, what they want to do to me, even in the presence of my parents. And if I said anything back, you know, I got attacked. So, which is, you know, it's a lasting pain, because it just makes it so hard for victims, survivors, to open up, to share, to put themselves out there, and to be able to be transparent. And a lot of them don't. A lot of them won't. And so God has given me the voice to speak to them. How I was able to get saved was I was in a drug den getting high, literally getting high, before I would go and meet the next man. But I also had an overdose. I was actually ODing. And I remember God coming to me. I remember seeing him. And he said, enough is enough. And I just looked up at him. I said, if you can save me, if you could heal me, if you could make me whole again, I will live the rest of my life speaking about what I was, who I am, how you saved me, how you protected me, how you gave me freedom and broke me from the bondage that was holding on. But I remember I was once being interviewed, and the interviewer, she says, I noticed 2 weeks before everything happened, you were baptized. She says, and whether you realize it or not, you were chosen by God to go through this. And that's why you were baptized, because what God was telling me was, they may have your body, but they will never take your soul. And that's why I have a heart for compassion, a heart for love, a heart for forgiveness. I forgave my mother. I forgave the abusers. Before my mother died, she asked me, I destroyed you, but yet you loved me through it all. How could you do that? And I said, because in the 10 Commandments it says to honor thy mother and thy father. though your days on this earth may be long. And how can I get on my knees asking God for forgiveness if I can't forgive you? You did what you had to do. Was it right? No. But you did what you had to do to take care of your family. And I did what I had to do to protect you. And so through it all, God was always there with me. God is with me now. And God will always be with me. And I speak to bring understanding to those who don't know what victims go through, but I also speak in the hopes that those that are victims hear my story and know that what God has done for me, He can do for them. But also, I share because there may be someone in the audience wherever He takes me that they may actually be causing this harm to an individual. And for them to actually see face to face, this is what I'm doing. I'm destroying another life. Because even though what they're doing is wrong, they are still God's children. And eventually, every knee will have to bow, every tongue will have to confess. So eventually they will have to face God in what they have done. But prayerfully, it will also help them to realize, you know what? I need to seek help. I need to reach out to victims and ask for their forgiveness. I need to do all that I can because a lot of them could be victims of human trafficking, of abuse. Everyone handles it in different forms. Yes, I could have been one that went around and, it happened to me, I'm going to do it to someone else. But God saw something greater. And God saw that I'm going to give you a voice that people will listen to, that people will hear, because it's not about me. If it was up to me, because I fought with God a long time, if it was up to me, I would not be sharing, because as I told God, this is my story. He said, nothing that you have is yours. It's all mine. And so I just want to read the scripture from Isaiah 61 and what God has chosen me to do, and which I am here to share with everyone. Because, even if you're sitting here and you're listening and you don't know where to turn, I will give you my card. It has my cell phone number on it. It has my email. It has my website. You can send me a message because, there are those, even if those that are watching online, because it's something that it's not easy to talk about. And not only is it not easy to talk about, but, again, when you're sitting in the midst of people and you're listening to their conversations, and that's why I always tell folks, no matter where you're at, in church, because a lot of it happened to me in church, listening to the conversations. One was actually the first lady. And I says, well, I know not to go to her for guidance, so you got to be careful because you don't know who's going through something at that very moment. And then you may wonder why you don't see a person come back, say, to church because of what was said to them, or not even said to them, but what was spoken. For me, this particular church, God He placed me there to to go through what I had to go through because that same church helped to birth this out of me. And so he will put you in situations, he will put you in places that you may not understand at the time, but eventually, if it's his will, he will show it to you. And if it is his will, he may not show it to you. But when I look back on it now, that's where my growth, that's where my freedom began. Because once they realized what my life was about, he had the same folks in that church ask me for forgiveness. And I had to also forgive them for what I was thinking. So the thing that I want parents to understand, and everything that they said is right on point. Know who your kids are talking to. Know your kids' friends, because not all of them are your friends. I consider her like a spiritual granddaughter. And I had actually brought to her attention, and this was earlier in the year, because she had posted a picture on Facebook. Beautiful, beautiful young lady, because she had gotten a brand new car. Had to be summertime because she had on shorts, so it was last summer. And I remember was going to their house, and I had said to her, can I speak to you? And I told her, I said, my story, because when I wrote my book, your parents bought my book, and when I went to speak, made sure that you were there to speak. And I said, take the picture down. She had on shorts. It wasn't the Daisy Duke, but they could be. I said, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because human trafficking. And there's so many people that may not even be connected to you on Facebook, but they're connected to someone that's connected to you. Take the picture down, because not only is it showing that she's a beautiful young lady, but she had actually just gotten a car, because I think your first year of college, you can't get a car. Second year, showing off the car. I said, your car is showing where it was purchased. You're also saying you're going home for the summer, so they know that you don't live in this particular place, that you only go to school there, and you can't wait to get your job back. So you already named that you're going back to Walmart. I says, and what the trafficker is doing is, okay, she doesn't live here, she goes to school there, this is where she lives. Well, she works there, but the car, it says, Manassas, even though she's in Dumfries. So you're giving him all that information. He's now going to find a young man who's about your age, who's going to be looking for a job in Walmart, and you're going to become friends because, welcome to Walmart, and you're a Christian. He's going to tell you he's a Christian, exactly what Bill had said, all of that. And he's going to make you feel comfortable enough that, can I meet your parents? You introduce him to your parents. I said, and I know that they're going to question him. He's going to make them feel comfortable. He's from a church family. His father's a preacher. His mom is the first lady. And he would like to take you to meet them next Saturday. They're going to agree to it. He picks you up. By the time you get to the corner, he's going to tell you to throw your phone out the window. And that will be the last time that anyone see you. Because once you take that picture down, your picture is already around the world. So that's why you have to be careful on what you're putting down, where you're going to school, because she also put down the school that she goes to. I said, because they could be on campus. Doesn't have to be a stranger. Again, like Bill said, it could be one of your classmates. Let's study together. So I say this every time I speak, and please stop putting pictures of your kids in the bathtub, in bubble bath, on the internet, on Instagram, that's where they live. The predators live there. So there's just, tell your kids, even adults, put your phones down when you're outside. Because with your head being down, you don't even know what's going on around you. And you could easily be snatched. If you're sitting at a counter, someone can easily drop something in your coffee, whatever. And parents with the little ones. I don't know how many times I've been in Walmart and see kids running around. Where's the parent? I had to go speak in Fayetteville, Arkansas last year, and I had a 3-hour layover in Atlanta airport. And so I was sitting in the food section, and it was a little girl, probably about 7 or 8 years old, because where I was sitting, there was the exit ramp. And she came and she sat at a table by herself. So now I had to stop eating because now I have to watch her. Because anyone can come and pick her up and just go down the exit ramp. And I'm like, okay, where is her parents? And in the meantime, Atlanta Airport, they constantly have over the loudspeaker about be mindful of human trafficking. If you see something, say something. And so I'm like, okay, where is this little girl's, and she's just sitting there, just playing. And then eventually a little boy came, probably younger than her. And they were there for a good half an hour. No parent came. And eventually they got up and they went, and I got up and I followed because I wanted to make sure. And then I, explained to the parents, you got to be very careful. Not only are they making the announcement, but I am a survivor. And if I wanted to, I could have taken your daughter and went right down the ramp because she was friendly, So these are some of the things that you have to be very, very careful of. But I leave you with scripture from Isaiah 61, 1 through 3. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prisons to those who are bound. Because at one point, this all described me. To proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourns, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they may be called trees of righteousness. I thank you so much for taking time out of your day, out of your schedule, to come and listen to each and every one of us and know that not just human trafficking, but familiar trafficking is real. Pay attention, see something, say something. And I can say now, I do trust the police department. Thank you.
Just an incredible story. Every time I hear it, just touches my heart. So thank you for the strength to be able to share that. And I truly believe that God has turned what she went through for just his glory. So to be able to go out and share her story with so many people and to be able to help protect so many more. So thank you for the strength to do that for us. I appreciate it. Shifting gears into a little bit of hope, since we've heard a lot of really heavy stuff, I want to introduce you to Brenda, I'm going to say it wrong, Tabachi, and she is zooming in, so you'll see that she had a little something this week, and so I'll yell. Rather than showing up and getting everybody else sick, she's going to zoom in for us. But she is with Reset 180, which is one of our partners also since really the beginning of FASTA, when they were when ATI was still Just Ask Prevention and Reset 180 was still Northern Virginia Human Trafficking Initiative, and we were the Fauquier County Human Trafficking Prevention Project. We all changed names during COVID. But it's funny how that worked. Everybody's changed their names, but that's fine. But she is with Reset 180, which is an incredible partner of ours that really works on the survivor side, working with victims and survivors to help restore them. She sent me a long bio that I'm pulling some pieces out of here. But her experience with Reset 180 began in 2013 when they were still Northern Virginia Human Trafficking Initiative, where she was a volunteer and helped starting as a director of victim services by contacting businesses to see if they'd be interested in providing pro bono services for survivors of human trafficking. Later, she worked to refer volunteers interested in mentoring to an organization that they worked with. And then she started working on the events team, where she's done several events, such as hosting their gala and planning for that. And then she also worked to create and obtain encouragement cards for their clients. She joined the Speakers Bureau and is to be able to provide information about their 101 human trafficking presentation, as well as many other aspects of the organization. She believes that the cause of eradicating human trafficking, or believes in the cause of eradicating human trafficking, and values Reset 180 due to the being faith-based organization. Jesus transforming the heart is what changes our world. And with our loving knowledge and praying team, people have an invaluable opportunity to change their lives from darkness into light. So welcome, Brenda. I think you have a hot mic. So I think you're hot, Brenda. Maybe.
I am, and I'm host disabled. I am just trying to share my screen, and it's not working. Okay, hold on just a minute. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, maybe I will just need to give this presentation without the screen.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, now I think it's going to do it. Sorry, but I am having problems.
Brenda, while you do that, I'll talk and be color commentary for a minute. You know.
Thank you.
That way it's not as stressful, everybody watching you, right? So this is like the worst part of every presentation you do when it comes to technology. It never quite works right. So it's just the way it is. I will say we have a couple more community conversations coming up. So when you go out today wearing your blue ribbons that are up here that you're all taking a handful of, there's your reminder. An opportunity to be able to invite folks to the next two community conversations that are scheduled. We have one at Fauquier High School on Wednesday, the 27th of April. It's from 6 to 7:30, and that one there is invited in by the Fauquier family, Fauquier, it's part of the schools. I can't remember the name of the exact group that's inviting us in, but it's really invited in by Dr. Jack and the principals, which is a really for us. And she's up and live. So just a second, I'll say the rest of that one there. But that, if you can invite folks to it, it's really going to feature Bill Wolf and Susan Young, who's she's actually a mother of a survivor, to tell her story and what her family went through was having a teenage victim. It's very, very touching, and I would highly recommend that you folks get to that and invite lots of people to it. And then I'll let Brenda go, then I'll give you information on the other one. Go, Brenda.
All right. Hi, as was mentioned, my name is Brenda Tabacci, and I'm representing Reset 180. And I want to thank Barbara Jean for her testimony. Barbara Jean is one of our board members, and we are so thankful to have her on our team. And that was quite a testimony, Barbara Jean. It's the first time I've really heard it. Really makes you think about why children act out, and that it's not, there's always a reason for that. Well, I get the opportunity to speak about the good part, about hope and outreach. And being Easter weekend, isn't that what Easter is all about, is hope and outreach. So I'm going to take a few minutes to share about the work that we do and ways that you can engage in locally and anti-trafficking work. As Amelia said, some of you may be more familiar with our previous name before we rebranded as Northern Virginia Human Trafficking Initiative, or otherwise known as NOVA HTI. In 2021, we rebranded, and our new name is Reset 180. And as a Christian organization, Reset 180 works to prevent and disrupt local human trafficking while restoring lives. So our three pillars are prevent, disrupt, and restore. The information on this slide is based on the work that we have done since 2015. We have touched the lives of more than 1,600 victims and survivors through outreach and survivor services. We have served survivors from 7 years to 66 years of age, and 90% of our survivors we have served are U.S. citizens. We have visited more than 114 separate illicit massage businesses, or IMBs as we call them, and we have had 261 grace-filled conversations on sex fire outreach in 2020 to 2021, and I will discuss more about that later. Based on a case study to show the impact on illicit massage businesses in Fairfax County, we found that each day an estimated 558 customers are visiting illicit massage businesses in Fairfax County, and each worker will have approximately 1,200 customers visits per year. In January 2021, 650 individuals were sold online for sexual services online within 50-mile radius of our office in Reston, Virginia. And in October 2021, the number increased to almost 3,700. And this does not include gang-led trafficking because they advertise by word of mouth. So each of these lives have lives that are impacted. It is important to think about the impact with their immediate and extended family. Pillow? Okay. Just like individual victims, these families will not be the same because they will also be affected. So this is why we try to raise awareness, so our community can identify red flags when they see them and then report it. Okay, I'm going to start talking about our three pillars. Our first pillar is prevent. One way we prevent is by educating through our free Human Trafficking 101 presentation given by our Trained Speakers Bureau. And it includes information on the four main types of human trafficking that we have seen through our work in Northern Virginia. Also talks about the red flags and how to engage locally in the fight against human trafficking in your community. So education empowers you and our community to help end slavery. This past year, we had 26 awareness events totaling 21,028 people. And of those 26 events, there were 22 presentations, which trained 1,028 people. Please consider organizing an awareness event by requesting one of our speakers on our website at reset180.com. And if you enjoy public speaking, you can also become a part of our Trained Speakers Bureau. Being a Christian organization, prayer is so important. Prayer is the thread that runs through all the work that we do. So you can consider joining our prayer team, and this would be a good way to get involved from home. So if you're interested interested in volunteering as a trained speaker and/or join the prayer team, you can scan the QR code on the slide or go to reset180.com/volunteer. I'm just going to leave the slide up just a little bit so those who want to scan it may do so. Okay, I'm going to go on. Our second pillar is disrupt. Jesus was always gracious and patient with the broken people he dealt with, and as people, we are commanded to do the same. Here at Reset 180, we aim to exemplify Jesus. We disrupt the cycle of local human trafficking through 2 outreaches. The first outreach started in 2017 when we started going to the IMBs to outreach the women who were inside. And as we talked to the women and offered resources, we would see the sex buyers going in and out of the IMBs. And so we felt led to start a sex buyer outreach team. Here, I'm going to try to present a video through YouTube. I hope this works, but this is Brian to share more about the outreach team, the sex buyer outreach team. So let me try this. Bear with me, please.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Hold on just a minute. I'm sorry. I'm going to get this so that you all can see it. Okay.
Part of the sex buyer outreach team. We try to meet sex buyers outside of illicit massage businesses and have grace-filled conversations about sex trafficking and share the message of Jesus Christ. While we're there, the Reset 180 prayer team, consisting of approximately 50 volunteers, are praying live as we give them specific prayer updates. I'd like to share one of the conversations that a team member and I had. One of the women on my team and I approached a young man outside of an illicit massage business. This business had numerous reviews online of customers receiving sexual services. My teammate began to talk to him and told him that we were from local churches and are concerned about what happens to the women who work there. As most buyers do, he told us that he was only there for a sports massage to help with sore muscles and joints. We made it clear to him that according to online reviews, the women who work there are required to do a lot more than just give therapeutic massage. That includes sexual services. Research shows that these women are sexually exploited, and force, fraud, and coercion are used against them to do this work. My teammate told him that I was a man of God, and that was why I was there to talk to him. Not feeling particularly worthy of that description, I interjected to explain to him what I believed that to mean. He told me that his name was Eric, and I shared my own personal story with him, and that I could easily be going there as a customer myself, and that I had found a God to be accountable to in my life and who offers me forgiveness and hope. My partner asked him not to go in for his appointment, and he said he had to because he had already paid for it online. He even showed us the original receipt on his phone. As he began to walk away from us, I said, "Are you okay with getting off on a girl who's being forced?" His response was, "Well, that's on me." And I said, "Yeah, it is." He went inside and we sat and prayed for him and waited for the next buyer. 5 minutes later, Eric was back outside. He approached us and said, "If it makes you feel any better, I got my money back." I told him the truth, which was it has nothing to do with me or my feelings. That was only about him making the right decision to not support this industry. We asked if he could ask God for anything, what would it be? And he said he would ask for a world with more justice in it. He allowed us to pray with him, and we thanked him as he left. This story doesn't end with Eric taking a Bible, asking us if he can join us for church on Sunday, and immediately redirecting his entire life. However, he is now one more guy who is aware of what he is supporting if he pays these illicit massage business owners. He is one more guy who had an interaction with Christians that did not involve condemnation or judgment. My hope is that this interaction will be a part of what God uses to reach him in time, and that he will remember the night he made the right decision the next time he is tempted. He said that he would ask God for a world with more justice, and I hope that to him that justice now extends to the women who are captive in these businesses. Jesus was always gracious and patient with the broken people he dealt with, and as one of those broken people, I'm commanded to do the same. To stop the spread of this industry, we can't just cheer as law enforcement fights traffickers. We have to lessen demand. As long as demand is high, people will be forced into sex slavery because there's so much profit for the traffickers. One of the ways that we can impact demand is by outreach to sex buyers. Many are in bondage to porn and sexual addiction and must decide to not be a contributor to this type of sexual exploitation towards another human being. Most lasting change occurs one person at a time, and this sex buyer outreach aims to reach as many as possible. At the time of this recording, we've had a total of 147 conversations. Visit reset180.com to find out how to be a part of this important work.
Okay. Trying to get back to my screen. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting back at my screen.
Brenda, across the top, go to your Zoom. The third tab on the top there looks like your Zoom tab. Straight down. Over one to the left.
There?
Nope, one next to
This
that has the Zoom at the top. It says what is it? Thought it was going to be the post attendee, but try to shrink down that page. You might be able to find where you were on your main page. There you
got
go.
it, I think.
Hey,
Hold on.
between the two of us,
There
it's
we
bad
go.
when I'm doing tech support.
All right. So please keep in mind that this video was recorded over a year ago. So the updated number of the grace-filled conversations to date are 261. So, and also please consider joining us in this outreach. Any adult can join, and you can visit our website to find out how. All right. The next slide is a map of 114 IMBs that we have visited throughout Northern Virginia. So each of these red circles represent an illicit massage business. They are hidden in plain sight next to doctor offices, attorney offices, and within our own communities. In Fairfax County, the IMBs bring in $23.6 million per year. And while we don't know the exact percentage that is or isn't taxed, we know that the majority is not taxed. So our second outreach is our phone text outreach. As I shared, there have been an increase in individuals being advertised online in our region for sexual services. On this video, Amanda is going to share some information on the phone text outreach that offers help to these victims. I'm going to try again for YouTube.
We know that the illicit massage businesses are not the only place sex buyers are purchasing people for sex. Another common ritual is for men to visit sites online where they see pictures and videos of people to purchase here in Northern Virginia for sexual services. One sex buyer said that buying a person for sex was as easy as going online and ordering a pizza. In fact, 84% of criminal sex trafficking cases use the internet to sell their victims for sex. If the sex buyer can find them, then so can we. Via our phone outreach, we have the opportunity to find phone numbers where people are being sold online in Northern Virginia and text them in order to provide them the resources they need to get out. During one such outreach, we were connected to a victim of sex trafficking who came into our resource center for services and successfully connected to law enforcement. That's a big impact, and we want to do more, but right now our resources are limited. We need your help to extend our work to the rest of Northern Virginia.
So we started our phone texting outreach in April 2021. And to date, we have texted 1,614 individuals, and we've had 136 responses and 27 requested services. One victim texted that she wanted a fresh start and was interested in counseling. Another victim texted us back and told us that she'd actually left her pimp from the last time we had spoken to her. And we also have a good number of male and transgender victims respond. In December 2021, the phone text outreach team provided basic necessities such as food, toiletries to 9 victims. We are able to do this phone texting outreach by using a cutting-edge technology called Freedom Signal. Freedom Signal pulled up data from the last years in 2019 through 2021. In 2019, there were 19,873 individuals listed online for sexual services in a 50-mile radius of our Reston office in Reston, Virginia. In 2020, that number rose to 92,833, and in 2021, that number rose to 121,783 individuals listed online for sale for sexual services. When we text a number, the number goes away. We can no longer text them. They have to respond in order for us to have a conversation to text back and forth. During our sex buyer outreach and our phone texting outreach, our prayer team is constantly praying for interactions and conversations that we have. If you are interested in volunteering in our sex buyer outreach team, our phone text outreach team, and/or our prayer team, you may also scan the QR code on the screen or go to reset180.com to volunteer. And I will just keep the screen up just a little bit so those who want to scan it may do so. Okay. Our third pillar is restore. We are honored to be a refuge and support to survivors of sex and labor trafficking. Trauma can have a long-term impact on the lives of survivors, but there's hope and restoration is available. We provide trauma-informed wraparound services to survivors through our resource center in Reston and plan to build a shelter for survivors in this year of 2022. Our four pillars for the Survivor Services Program are financial empowerment, life skills, healing and growth, and community. On an ongoing basis, we have provided access to groceries, assistance finding safe shelter, transportation, therapy, child care, legal services, budget training, vehicle repair, utilities, rent, insurance, education, trained mentors, and more. And all these things are necessary, but here are the times that are especially precious to us. When a survivor called over the weekend to let us know that she was in crisis, someone from our team went and took a walk with her to help her process what she was going through. For the survivor who feels stable enough to start building a healthy community and asked a team member to attend a church with her a few times that she had picked out. Or when a survivor called to say that her baby was sick and she didn't know how to navigate taking care of a sick child. Our team stepped in to walk with her through it. And so these are the times that we value so much. So what is next? We are partnering with Dayspring Mennonite Church here in Faulkner County. They have land, and we're going to build a housing program for survivors. We are currently completing a special permit with the county now, which is the last step. Once we have it approved, we will move forward with the building process. Our hope is to build partnerships within Faulkner County so that this can be a community effort in restoring survivors. We will need staff and volunteers 24/7. So phase one of the housing program will allow survivors 1 year to stabilize from trauma. So we are currently seeking vendors such as vendors for materials, landscaping, concrete, HVAC, roofer, carpentry, septic system installer, well driller, siding, gutters, insulation, drywall, painting, electrical, and you can see the rest. There's quite a bit of help that we are looking for. If you are interested in, before that, once we have a special permit approved, we will schedule a vision casting event for those in the construction industry and ask for their help in building the residential program. And if you're interested in this vision casting event, you can email us at partnership@reset180.com to let us know. And you can also request an electronic copy of a brochure with more information on this subject. So what do we do now? We need to become vigilant about our surroundings. Victims are hidden in plain sight. You can volunteer. You can become an abolitionist. An abolitionist is a defender of freedom who brings awareness about human trafficking to their sphere of influence, prays, and gives at least $30 a month to help restore lives. You can donate financially. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Reset 180 or host an event. I have shared with you ways you can get involved, but if you would like to volunteer with us, you can go to reset180.com and click on volunteer, and the online application roles available and steps are outlined for you. Also, we have what's called a freedom tree, and you can host a freedom tree at your church, business, organization. This is one way to spread awareness to your community where they can learn who Reset 180 is and what we do. The freedom tree is like a tree-like structure that holds keys on its limbs, and when someone takes a key, they can scan a QR code printed on the back. We're actually on a tag with the key and find out more about us, hear about a survivor testimony that we have worked with in her powerful story, and give a financial gift to unlock freedom for others coming out of the life. So essentially, this is you can take a gift and give a gift, and these keys represent someone's freedom, and you are the key to making that happen. If you are interested in hosting a tree, please contact us at communications@reset180.com. So remember, if you think you see anything that may be some form of human trafficking, please report it. You can take a picture of these local numbers to call in order to report tips. And I'll just keep this up here in case you want to take a picture of it. Okay. Or you can call the U.S. National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can also take a picture of the slide if you want to. This is a good number to have handy on your cell phone. Polaris runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is available 24/7, 365 days a year, and additionally, calls are answered in at least 172 languages through interpreting service. You can save it on your phone. This number and text, so that in the future you can easily call, text, chat, or whatever if you suspect something. Thank you all so much for your time. Awareness is power, and knowledge is contagious. Awareness is key to fighting human trafficking because an educated community is a vigilant community. The more aware we are as a whole, the less chance that just even one more person falls victim. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brenda. Really excited about having this restoration house right here in Fauquier County. I mean, what an incredible gift to bring into the community that we can wrap our arms around these victims as they become survivors and get restored again. So what a great opportunity for us as a county to come together around them. So please pray on that. Pray that that they get the special permits through with the county. It's been, I'll say, a very smooth process so far. Like God has really truly ordained this process. It should have been very difficult to get all of the things through zoning and all the stuff that's had to happen, and it has been extremely smooth. We're just really blessed to be able to see that happening here in the county. As we wrap up, we have one more piece of hope and of action, and then we're going to take Q&A from everyone. So Bill, will you please come back up and talk about prevention education and what we can do to be able to help with that throughout the schools?
Thanks, Amelia, and thank you all for sticking through this today and for all our presenters. You may recall the story of the 17-year-old girl, Maria, that I told earlier, the one whose boyfriend was convincing her to engage in commercial sex. I never finished that story. She ultimately agreed and said, okay, I'm going to do what you've asked me to do. So they had made a plan, and the next day they were supposed to go, and she was going to have sex with the quote-unquote friend. By the grace of God, she went to school the next day and went through a classroom lesson on human trafficking. She recognized what was happening. She recognized that she was being groomed into that. Because of the lesson that she received, she was empowered to go home, to report to mom. Mom called the police. We got called out to investigate, and I'm happy to report that the offender was arrested, is now sitting in jail for a very long time, and the young lady was never actually exploited. Prevention curriculum does work, and that curriculum was designed, produced, and implemented by Just Ask Prevention, which is I don't even know how to say it. It's part of ATI, right? It's one of our programs, one of our programmers. Yeah. The prevention curriculum is really so critical, and it was really built off of the time when I was investigator and seeing victim after victim come through and saying, I just didn't know. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to turn to. And you heard from Barbara Jean earlier how there were so many individuals in her life that was busy blaming her, saying, you need to do better. You need to do better in school and get rid of your attitude. In fact, the name Just Ask comes from a very similar story. There was a young lady named Emily. We recovered Emily out of a local hotel at the age of 17 and found out that she had been trafficked for over 3 years, since the age of 14. And as we were interviewing her, we found out that gotten involved, counselors had gotten involved. They had seen the behaviors that Barbara Jean had described, being disrespectful, acting out in class, all of these other things. But their response was to say, well, you need to change your attitude. You need to do better. Nobody recognized what was happening. Throughout this time, she ended up getting involved with the juvenile court system. There was law enforcement involved. There were probation officers involved. There were counselors involved. Nobody ever identified her as a victim of human trafficking. And I'll never forget sitting across from that table, looking at her and saying, Emily, how is it possible that for 3 years, nobody ever identified you as a victim of human trafficking? And she looked back at me and she said, because nobody ever asked. If somebody would have just asked them, if I felt like I could have disclosed and they would have understood, I would have told them, but I felt hopeless and I felt isolated. Prevention curriculum is critical. It's critical for our young people so that they know how to identify what's happening. They can identify that it's wrong and know how to get help. It's critical in instilling peer-to-peer supports as well, so that if friends are seeing something happening to their friend, they can intercede or interdict in that situation. And then it's also critical for our educators to be trained so that they can recognize the signs and symptoms of trafficking and exploitation. So I'm very excited because we're in discussions with Fauquier County Public Schools. Our hope is to be able to implement our prevention curriculum here in Fauquier County by next school year, but we need your help. And we talk about every role. We play a role in educating the community and sharing the information, but also advocating for solid programming. So we encourage you to contact your school board member. We encourage you to contact the administrators within the school district here and tell them that you support implementation of the Just Ask prevention curriculum and that you hope to see it by next school year. So thank you all again for being here, and I hope that you all have lots of homework over weeks so that we can again stop human trafficking before it starts. Thank you.
Yeah, before we wrap up with Q&A here, I started off by talking about the upcoming community conversations again on Wednesday, April 27th from 6 to 7:30 at the Fauquier High School Auditorium. That's going to be a really large event. It's going to be really focused on the work that Just Ask is doing with the prevention education, laying that groundwork within the community and within families to be able to come out. That's very much bring your middle school and high school kids and those in your life that you love, that you want to get out there to it. And again, it's going to have a mother of a survivor that's going to share their family story, and it's pretty impactful. And it's that moment of when I listened to her story the very first time we did a community conversation. I didn't know who to expect as a mother of a survivor. Like I don't know what I expected. I did not expect the woman that stood up, that walked up there, that looked like she's basically she's a little bit older than me, but not by much. Looks like me, blonde hair, blue eyes, looks like a normal, it occurred to me that this could be my next door neighbor, it could be my best friend, it very well could be me. And that's when it really hit me that this is not something that the traffickers care who it is. They don't care if it's color, they don't care your social economic situation, where you live, they don't care about any of that. Nobody's immune to this. So that's when it really hit me of like, holy cow, we need to really pay attention to this. So she's going to speak at that one there on the 27th. We also have another one here in Old Town at Warrenton Presbyterian. It's hosted there as the location, but it's actually a bunch of the Old Town merchants that came together. So it's Latitudes, Earth, Blaze, and Fire, Old Town Open Book, Frame Craft, Sherry Stuff, the Hobby Shop, and one more. Come on. There's one more. I'm like looking at, I just designed the flyer, but there's 7 of them that came together to be able to put this on. That is on a Sunday. So go to church, get your brunch, come from 1:30 to 3:30 at Warrenton Presbyterian in their fellowship hall. But that's going to be open, obviously, also to the public. Bring people, get folks there. It's going to be really important conversation to be able to share information about it. I will also say, be prepared to maybe be on camera a little bit because PBS is actually recording that one there because they're going to do a series on anti-trafficking movement in Virginia, and one of the ones that they're focused on is what we're doing with FASTA because what we're doing is working to be able to bring the community together. So they're recording that one there to be able to use for some B-roll for them. So that again is on May 15th. So questions. This is a lot of content. It's really heavy stuff. And I know there's questions. So yes.
One of the statistics was 13% of people may report. Okay. One of the statistics was that 13% may report that they had a situation like that. My question is, suppose you are one of the 13% who reports, what's the waiting period for action to be taken?
So when's your report? Mm-hmm. Detective Shaw, do you want to take that one there? Once reported, what's the chance?
It's working. Once it's reported, then we do a full investigation. So it's fairly quickly. So if they do report it to the sheriff's office, patrol will take the initial report, and then it will be sent to our criminal investigations division where it will be assigned to a detective. And then from there, they'll reach back out to the reporting party and do their own investigation. And if needed, it'll be sent to the FBI, or if it's a human trafficking case, then we would immediately involve other agencies as well, like federal departments. And I've worked with HSI with their human trafficking advocate, and they've come out and they are a great resource. So it's fairly quick once it's reported.
Great question. Come back here, that way Brenda can hear us when we ask.
I actually have 2 questions. The first one is for Ms. Barbara Jean. When it's a familial situation, There's such a reluctance to remove a child from the home. How do they navigate that?
Well, for me,
It's on.
for me, it's, I guess it's like a devil advocate, because protecting my mother meant not telling what she was doing. Because if I had reported what she was doing, they would have removed me from her and put me in the foster system. It's not to say that all foster systems are bad, but most kids that are sexually abused or trafficked, it's also done in the foster system. One of the things that I did know was that, well, I didn't know it, but I know my mother. What she's doing is causing harm to me. But to be removed from her, it meant her going to jail. And that's what I didn't want to happen. So by not telling, I was protecting her, even though I still had to go through what I went through.
And my second question is for Mr. Wolf. You talked about that young man that got locked up, and I was just wondering if you've ever used the perpetrator in a way to kind of expose the larger framework of what's going on, like if it's a big organization that's doing it, like how do you infiltrate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of that was, somebody mentioned earlier gangs involved in trafficking. And so we do know a lot of the criminal street gangs are using that as the way to make money. So oftentimes, if there is a larger network, then law enforcement does have the resources, particularly as Detective Shaw was talking about, bringing in federal resources to help navigate and look at the larger network itself. I can tell you as a whole, there is a movement within law enforcement investigations as it pertains to human trafficking to shift more to looking at the networks. I work with alongside a group called Zero Trafficking, which is a group of intelligence analysts that have developed a proprietary system that they can actually use open source intelligence, meaning information that any of us can go on the internet today and find, whether through social media or just public records, et cetera. And they're actually able to identify those larger networks and see where they're moving and operating in and out of. So my work with them is essentially to try to get that into the mainstream. One of the big things that we are really focused on in pushing on the law enforcement side is to not build cases dependent on victim testimony. As I'm sure you can imagine and hearing from Barbara Jean what they experience, and then oftentimes when it is an individual like a family member that is the offender in the case, having them try to testify and be involved in the criminal justice process is really challenging. And it can sometimes be a barrier to prosecution. It was one of the, very honestly, it was one of the frustrations that I had as an investigator, is because people would look at you and say, well, just go lock them up. Just go lock up the bad guys and get them all off the street. Okay, but there's a process involved in that. And I think we've evolved in our understanding of trafficking, how the networks are working, so that we can now deploy pretty innovative investigative techniques to go after those networks, like you mentioned, instead of reliance upon victim testimony and victim disclosure, right? Because we know the victims are not coming forward and disclosing.
There's a couple of questions up here. Catherine, I'll let you go first, then hand back to Steph.
I have a question. I'd like to share an experience. So my husband and I in our early 20s and 30s raised 19 foster children, all girls, all coming, and I couldn't help but feel you, Barbara, because 3 of the children out of the 19, we didn't call it human trafficking back then, were familiar trafficking. And, to your question, if the advocate is serious about what they're doing, they will find a remedy. And I'm proud to say that we raised from 11-year-old to 18, we saw them all graduate. We adopted 3 11-year-olds. But I couldn't help but reflect about their vulnerability. And I remember one time we woke up in the morning and we have 13 children in the home. My husband and I said, how did this happen? And it was referral. It was referral. And if you can imagine that there were 19 children that we took into our home in a small state like the Vermont, can you imagine how big this was? You know, that all these children were either being exploited. I always tell the one story about my daughter June. She was troublesome. Middle of the night, screaming, profanity. And we finally got her into counseling. And you know, just sat there with arms closed for about 10 sessions. And one day I got up and said, we're not doing this anymore. If you're not going to participate, I can't spend my time doing this, and it's a waste of time. And as I started to walk out the door, she said, Mom, never called me Mom before. And she said, do you know why I'm the way I am? And I said, no, I really want to know. And she said, I learned to survive my father at the age of 8 with knives to keep him off me and his friends off me. And that's why I carry knives around all the time, because she would. But we finally got to the root of it. And these stories are so profound. And, you know, I really, you can play a part. You just have to identify. You know, I always say a broken adult can see a broken child a mile away. You know, and I have that knack for that. Always have. But, you know, I really thought, Barbara, I said, you hit it right on the nail. I mean, and we were only successful in reuniting one of the children who were molested by her parents and their friends. Only one was successful in being reunited with their family after months and years of counseling.
I would like to share that one of the things that people will need to understand and realize when it comes to victims of sexual abuse, human trafficking, the things that they say, and if you're trying to help, and praise God for you and your husband, that even though she was acting out, you didn't send her back. Victims have to know that I can trust you. I have a dear friend, and I remember her telling me that God told her that I was her assignment. Because there were people that walked away. Because it's like, how can you deal with, I mean, she cussing, she carrying on, and all of this stuff. She said, but God told me that she was my assignment. She says, and I knew, she says, I could see that you were hurting, but instead of talking about it, lashing out. Because, again, you know, people would just walk away. I can't deal with that, and they would just walk away. But for me, and I mean, the things that I said to her, I'd never put my hands on her, but the things that I said, one day I looked in the mirror, she came over, and I said, she keeps coming back. She keeps coming back. And little by little, I shared just a bit, not much, just a bit. And she said to me, whenever you're ready to open up, I'm not going anywhere. I will be right here. She said, because I see greatness in you. If you could see what I see, God's going to use you. And my pastor had even said, God's going to use you to heal a nation. But you first have to be able to open up and share what you're going through. So the fact that you sought counseling for this young lady and she was able to open up and let you know why she carried the knives, a lot had to do with she began to trust you.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Thank you. Barbara Jean, your testimony is so compelling. And on this weekend, of all weekends, you testified to the supernatural power of the living God to change lives. Thank you. My question, I think maybe is for Mr. Wolf. You were talking about, or maybe it was the lady on the video, you were talking about how many of the massage parlors there are. Was it over 1,000? That's my first question. The second question is, what keeps you from just going and closing them down?
It was, can y'all hear me? It was 114 we have visited in Fairfax County. That's just the ones we have visited. There are plenty more that are out there. And what keeps us from closing down? I think Bill can probably answer that better, but I think it's manpower and just it takes a lot. You need to go in and you can have sting operations, but have a sting operation, it takes people to be able to do that. But I think Bill could answer that problem, that question better.
Sure. So it is a complex question, right? And so when I was working for the federal government, when we used the word innovative, it meant what was happening 10 years ago. The government's really slow in kind of catching up on ways to do things. And so to the point that I was trying to make earlier, we are shifting to where we're looking more at the networks themselves. And massage parlors are very much one of the more complex human trafficking networks that exist in this country. They have international ties, particularly the Asian massage parlors have ties back to China and other places. Right now, a lot of the primary investigative tools are focused around victim disclosure. And when you have victims that are we talked about what are those threats, right? So oftentimes in those cases, the threat is if you don't do what we're telling you to do, your family back in China is going to suffer. When you think about local law enforcement, what authority do they have to intervene or protect family members back in China? They don't, right? And so there is no incentive for the survivor to cooperate with the law enforcement investigation. Very much to Barbara Jean's point, right? She didn't want her mom to get in trouble, right? You're always thinking about the other people. And that's something I think that is important that probably didn't come out today. Most human trafficking survivors, an overwhelming majority, are extremely compassionate individuals. And not saying compassion is wrong in any sort of way, but it is something that traffickers can leverage against them because they know they can put that guilt factor to control them. And so this is a long-winded answer to say you don't have a lot of victim cooperation for multiple reasons within those types of cases. Law enforcement resources are limited, and that's why we need to shift to these new actually innovative investigative techniques. And so we're working hard in the field from the private sector angle to be able to bring those tools and resources to law enforcement to be more effective.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, I have two questions to the detective. I heard you talking earlier about the cell phones with the kids, having them in school and the problem that it creates in the classroom. My question is this: if the kids have this access to the cell phone, even though it's a distraction in the classroom, and not knowing what they're doing on their cell phone, and when something does occur with that child, what consequences does the parent has to pay for what has happened to the child? Because they always say this should have never happened, but they said they have their right to privacy.
Oh, that's a good question. So are you kind of referring to like the school's take on the cell phone, or like
Yes.
what happened? So if they get caught with the cell phone at school, disseminating child pornography or going to sites they shouldn't do, then the school will handle that as an administrative thing within the school system of what the punishment would be. The parents then are notified, obviously, that their child has done something that they shouldn't have done on their phone or on any computer in the school system. And then the parents can do whatever they feel the proper discipline is, whether that's take their cell phone or, limit their internet. But it's also hard when everything in school is online and they need to be online. So I'm not sure what the school's punishment is for those violations, but I do know they have to sign, the student code of conduct. Do you have an answer for that?
Yes, I do.
Please.
Here, let me hand over the mic, and then you can say it, then we'll bring it back. Then we have one more question.
What Fauquier has done is try to really put a super wonderful filtering system in place, which prevents students from going to certain sites and that sort of thing. But, sometimes the students can outwit adults. But that's one thing, exactly. That's one thing we do. We have a filtering system in place. But, most of the time, I would really say over 90% of the time, it does work.
Yes.
Thank you.
But if a child is sharing photographs that they shouldn't be sharing at school, that's not really going through the school network, it's just been through text messages or Snapchat, then that's where law enforcement would get involved, and it would get reported to the school resource officer, who then usually contacts the detective that will come out and seize the phone, and then we'll write the search warrants or do whatever we need to do to see where the images are and where they went and who got them to try to stop it from spreading any further.
My second question could be to Mr. Wolf, the detective. When we look at the large range of pedophiles and sexual offenders, we know that there is a lot of sex trafficking going on there. What's the percentage of that's happening in our communities and throughout the country? Where there's child sexting, trafficking is being exploited by those type of people.
I'm not sure of the statistical percentage, but I can speak for Fauquier. We do have a number of child sex offenders on the sex offender registry that live within our county, and they are monitored by the Virginia State Police, and they're not supposed to access the internet, and they are the ones that kind of monitor those people. As far as trafficking, the sex offenders actually trafficking people that are currently registered, I have not heard of any cases within Fauquier or anywhere surrounding jurisdictions on that. But I don't know if Bill can speak to what he knows about those statistics.
Yes, I would say that when you talk about pedophilia, you're talking about people that have an attraction to young people. Traffickers tend to target young people not necessarily because of pedophilia, but because they're more vulnerable, they're easier to manipulate. Now, one of the pieces that we haven't really addressed today is the demand, right? Who's fueling demand for these illicit services? And these are, in fact, individuals that oftentimes do have sexual addictions, sexual perversions. Again, I could probably keep here all afternoon if we wanted to start talking about the linkages between pornography and what's happening with trafficking as well, because there are, what we're seeing is there is a lot of sexual addictions and perversions that are out there that are untreated. And I'll also tell you, because I'm in the private sector and I can say this now, we need to be advocating from a cultural perspective as well, because what we're seeing in our country is a movement to try to normalize some of these behaviors. And exactly to your point, there are some people that argue that it is a sexual preference and they should not be denied that sexual preference. And that is a movement that has more traction than you all know. And if we as community members don't stand up now and speak out against it, my fear is that we'll get too far down the road and we will be past that point of no return. So just understanding that it is problematic, it is out there, and it is more prevalent than any of us realize.
Thank you, Bill.
I had a question about the massage parlors. How do you distinguish them from a reputable spa? Is there a way to tell?
That's kind of difficult, but I will say in my experience that the ones that are run by the Asians are typically more prone to being giving extra services. I will say there are a few here in Warrenton that also are on the list for providing those services, and we are aware of them, and we are working with federal agencies to try to see what we can do to make them go away. But unfortunately, as soon as one goes away, a new one shows up. So we have, I think, 3 right now in Warrenton, and we have people that, that I work with that have called because they thought that they were needing a massage, and then the text messages they got with the, oh, honey, 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 and the weird, vibes they were getting, they brought it to our attention, and we're like, yeah, don't go there. So I would definitely check reviews, and I would make sure that they are licensed. And to run a massage parlor in Warrenton, you have to fill out an application, and you have to go through the Warrenton Police Department, the person that's giving out massages, and they have to prove that they do have, certificates, and they have to be background checked and stuff like that. And even the ones that are not so good are going through the right channels and doing the right things to make them seem like they are good, but they are offering services that are not good. So.
Be really stereotypical here on this one. There's very few times that you need a walk-in massage at 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. Honestly, if you pay attention to the 4 massage parlors around town, there's one that's above the vape shop across from Walgreens, and they're open at 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. Not very often you need a walk-in massage at those hours. So kind of think about those types of things. I mean, that's very stereotypical, and I'd say stereotypes are there for a reason. But you can start looking, once you start paying attention to that, of what are their hours? There's not very often, I go to a massage at Salon Homage that I don't need to have an appointment. There's very few times that you can get a walk-in massage at a reputable massage place because they're scheduled. If you look at the signage on the outside, you start noticing a pattern in the types of signs that are on the outside. Can you see in? Can they see out? If you pay attention to those types of things, and your radar starts to go up, and you'll start to go, oh, that's what's going on. So pray on it too. I'll say, so my husband's finally gotten the bug to kind of work on some of this stuff with me. And so he's been praying, and he runs a lot, 16 miles, 3 days a week. So he's insane. But he's taken up running around the 4 massage parlors and praying around them as he runs. So I'll tell you what, do a Jericho walk around the massage parlors and pray on it. I mean, there are things that you can do. He's probably going to get arrested at some point for being that creepy guy that keeps walking around these things and running around these things and praying, but he does it 3 days a week. So there's no reason why you can't do it.
Maybe the also, if I could add, some of the signs can be a security measure, such as cameras or double locked doors. Also, the prices are usually cheaper than a normal massage parlor, and like you said, you usually can't see inside very well. So those are some of the other indications. Also, if people would notice that maybe a woman would be walking in early and then not coming back out, or being escorted by somebody. Those are some typical signs.
Yeah, I was going to suggest maybe once someone comes to check out the creepy guy running around on the outside, they'll go check out the creepy people on the inside. But my question is to anyone on the panel who may have any idea about the connection between the minor attracted people and the uptick in that, and the pornography and all of it. Is there an entity that keeps track of that information, how those are connected?
So the first place that comes to mind is the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, NCOSE for short. ncose.org, I believe is their website. They have a lot of great resources that really try to expose the linkages there. I think that better explain why pornography, even mild forms of pornography can lead to sexual addiction and other forms. That would be where I would tell you to go first, I think.
So I'm going to, adding on to that a little bit. So Sex is the New Drug is a good Facebook group to follow, and is another nonprofit, but really is looking at porn addiction and sex addiction. It's a good one to, if you want some good information. They have a great documentary. It's like a 40-minute documentary on porn addiction and what it does to your brain. And it talks about that the average age of a child getting exposed to hardcore porn is 9 years old now, because they have access to their phone. It's not what it was when we were kids, that you might see your uncle's Playboy. That's not what it is anymore. It's that you can get access to hardcore porn on your cell phone. And these kids don't know what they're looking at. They don't understand. So then it starts to normalize it. So would highly recommend, if you get a chance, to go out and watch that video. I'm kind of considering bringing that video and doing a screening here in Fauquier and bringing together some panelists to be able to talk about what does that look like? What does it mean? What's out there to be able to help? Because what you find is that porn addiction, again, is across all lines. It doesn't matter color. It doesn't matter your religion or lack thereof. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't even matter male or female. So you start looking at that, well, then that is kind of all of us. So how do we as a community come around that? How do we help people get the help they need so that they don't rely on trafficking victims or massage parlors or other things? And then how do we get ahead of it to be able to help our kids understand what they're seeing and what not to go to? So I'm noodling on that still.
Just to touch on that, with the cell phones and the children, I worked a case several years ago. My older boys are, one's 21 and one's 17, but they had the first Nintendo DS. It was like the first ones that came out like 10, 15 years ago. And they apparently accessed the internet. I had no idea because I'm not a very techie person, and they had these little DSs and they'd play them in the car and play video games, whatever. Well, I was working a sex case involving a sibling on sibling. So the older brother was sexually abusing the younger child. And while I was interviewing him, and I was trying to understand where he learned these behaviors and where he got these ideas from, because he shouldn't know these things, because he was himself 8 or 9. And I asked if he ever saw any pictures or videos of something like this, and he said yes. And I said, well, where did you see these? And he explained to me that he would take his Nintendo DS and he could connect to the internet, and he was watching hardcore pornography on his Nintendo DS. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was possible. So even as a law enforcement parent, I had no idea you could access that from a Nintendo DS. So the Nintendo Switches and all those new devices that are out geared for younger children, they can absolutely go online and do all sorts of things that you didn't think were even possible. So it's not just cell phones, it's all that. And also, people looking to traffic or approach children, they're also doing that on Xboxes and PlayStations. And a lot of parents don't think, they're like, oh, they're just playing games with their friends. Well, yeah, my children play games with friends. And I'm like, who are you talking to? I don't know. He's in another state. They don't even know these people. And I'm like, you're just having conversations like your best friends, and you don't even know who they are. Oh, well, they said they're 17. Well, how do you know? How do you know they're not 50 sitting in their underwear enjoying their conversations with you? Because that's what happens. So having those conversations about other devices, not just cell phones, are also important. That's it.
Good point. Thank you. One more question back here. You can ask as many as you need.
My question, I was sitting there thinking about the pedophiles and the sex traffickers. What is the sentencing guideline? Are there two different guidelines when it comes to pedophiles and sex traffickers? Or are they based on the same borderline?
I believe they're the same. I mean, you're either, if you're a pedophile and you're out there looking for a child and someone is trafficking a child, then you're going to go to a trafficker to then have access to a child. So I believe they're all kind of in the same realm of people.
So when those sex offenders are released back out in society and they're in your community and people won't know this, that's going to make the community feel a little bit apprehensive about having that guy next door, knowing they have their kids, and you have those traffickers, they're there, but is it fair to us to have these people released back out in society more so than a man go out and kill somebody, gets life in prison, but you have a predator come back out on the street and still prey on kids?
I understand your frustration. I work sex crimes, and I feel like the cases I prosecute never get enough time. Like, the people that are using drugs get more time than the guy that's molesting his granddaughter. And I'm like, I'd rather have the guy using drugs live next door to me than the grandfather that wants to molest children. So it is unfortunate, and this is what we can do as a community to reach out to our legislators and tell them, like, there needs to be higher guidelines for people that are committing sex offenses, because sadly, it's, especially if they're a first offender, they're like, get a little slap on the wrist. And it's really, really frustrating, especially for us that are doing our jobs, working hard to prosecute these cases. And then you have a jury of 12 people that are like, oh, I don't know if I believe that child. I think they're lying. So it can be very frustrating. And then the judge not give enough time where we feel that they should be spending life in prison. So.
One of the things. Hello? Yeah. Oh. One of the things I want to touch on is, because you brought up an excellent point about the pedophile or trafficker getting out of jail and going into the neighborhood. I have to bring it back to familiar trafficking as well, because that pedophile is still in jail. But someone, your neighbor, is actually the trafficker. So, like in my case, seeing the different men coming in and out of the house would not have been a surprising thing for my neighbors, because my mother's from a large family. So, uncles always came over. And when they came with friends. So to see the different men, it wasn't strange. But some of those men were part of, being the trafficker. So it's hard to, in my case, it would have been hard because every day someone was coming over to the house. But the pedophiles that are coming out of jail and going into your neighborhood, also pay attention to the kids. Kids will change. If your son or daughter has a favorite uncle, cousin, and they're having a barbecue, now this child doesn't want to go over there. They don't want to be in the presence of that uncle or cousin. And you say to them, but he's your favorite or she's your favorite aunt, because it's not just men, women also. Well, I don't want to go. But why? But they don't want to tell you because they don't want to get that cousin or uncle. Phrase it in a way that, did he say something to you? Did he hurt you? Did he put his hands on you? Even if the child doesn't open up, they may begin to cry. And that's your answer. Because if you have a favorite person and all of a sudden you don't want to be around that person, that's their way of letting you know something's going on, but I can't tell.
Thank you, Barbara. More questions before we wrap up? Looking around, I don't see anybody saying that they're going to have more questions. I want to say thank you to our panelists today. I know that it was a lot of your day, and I appreciate it very much. I appreciate the McCulloughs for inviting us here and for feeling it on your heart to be able to take on this very difficult topic, especially the day before Easter. And just thank you guys for the opportunity, and thank you to each of you for coming out, taking the time to learn about such a heavy topic. Please come up, grab information, grab some of the restroom posters, grab some of the lots. I have way more ribbons, so there's always ribbons. Oh, and Barbara has one more thing. Go ahead.
So that's why. So.
Good point, Barbara. Thank you for that reminder that, again, it knows no boundaries, right? We see it, we hear it all the time. It knows no boundaries. So again, thank you all very much. Please, every one of you, come up here, get some of the literature. There's information there, both on the sextortion, some information from ATI, the restroom posters. Grab a handful of ribbons, and thank you all, and have a wonderful Easter celebration tomorrow.